Okay. So thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. Okay. And now I'm going to comment to you something that, from my point of view, is rather simple. You see here, data modeling expert. The more that I do, the less I trust that I'm a modeling expert. Really. Because, why is that? Because we are learning every day. And what I'm going to explain today is something that, from my point of view, is a really market flow. So, and the market flow regards to standardization. Why? If we are going to share data, and the previous presentation is very good at that, we have to agree on what we are going to share. But how many of you are using standards for their data? So, simple. How many of you belong to a company? Work, or you are the owner? Okay, quite a few. And possibly you are sharing data with the government, with your customers, with clients, with your suppliers, and you are using a format that you have defined by yourself, possibly. Or sometimes you are forced to do something. Okay, this is what I'm going to. Let me recap what's happening in the market. In the market, there are situations in which there is no, let's say, a dominant standard. I call it the jungle. So everybody is doing whatever they want. And this is possibly the most common situation. And these standards or these formats are incompatible. So especially if you're, I'm a bit a researcher on data in Spain. And when you're trying to download the budget of the different municipalities, the structure is always different. So there is quite an imagination. So I'm going to structure the budget in a different way. Imagine that you are willing to know what is the budget for renewable energies in the municipalities of a region. That's an impossible question to answer. Impossible. Okay. This is the jungle. Sometimes, for different reasons, there are several dominant agents, okay? Because possibly they are very big players, and they have competing standards. And this standard used to be incompatible as well. The good situation could be when there is a main player. A main player, you are in logistics, GTFS, you know, the standard for transport. Okay? GTFS is somehow a de facto standard. We have the good situation. It was originally created by Google. But Google, fortunately, in this case, releases an open license. And therefore, we can use, everybody can use it without no cost. Okay. But not sometimes, in example, in the health sector, there is another standard called HL7, which is proprietary. So if you have to use it, or you have to implement something, you have to pay. And this is the adopted standard. And then we have the public administration. You will see that I'm not very fond of public administrations, not for any reason, because they do their best, and their best is not that good. So there are many public regulations. You know, an example, so Spain is a quite decentralized country, and every region is creating a regulation. This regulation is not taking into account the others, okay? And so somehow this is public regulation, but this is like the competing situation, but with a point. The public administration is telling you, you have to follow the standard, okay? So, okay, this is nice. But what happens in the real market? We are no longer, let's say, in static markets, but in digital markets. And what's the difference? The differential factor of the digital markets is speed. Speed is much more quicker. So imagine that we are in an emerging market, like robotics, like drone management, like new logistics, okay? I don't know if you are expert at standardization bodies, but if you go to a standardization body, usual, I need a standard, or several big players of the market, we need a standardization. What happens? It takes years. But the market is there. So there are many companies that 5 years ago were rather small, and now they are large. So they cannot be waiting for the market, for the standardization bodies to create something that we agree on. And this is what is happening. So there is an alternative. So what I want to tell you today is that there is an alternative, which is complementary. And if you go for agile standardization, instead of taking months or years for creating a standard that we can share this data through iShare and an iShare framework, we are doing that in weeks. So why are we capable of doing that in weeks? I'm going to summarize. And of course, you can feed the standardization bodies. Oh, this is what we do. Just create a classical standard. You can do it. Okay? So the standardization is, you do three things. So you have a process, bureaucratic process usually. You reach a consensus. What's the point? To reach that consensus, you waste months, years. And what happens in these months, years? The market goes away, okay? And then you reach a technical definition. And unfortunately, in most of the cases, this technical definition has not tested in the market. And then you have the standard, try to use in your use case, and say, oh my God, there are things missing. The agile standardization is the other way around, okay? In order to enable interoperability, there is at API level, so how to access the data. I'm not going to get into that. But regarding the data, the structure of what we are interchanging between these different entities. So what we need for the digital market is something that can be reached at market speed. So in a matter of weeks, days, eventually months, but not longer, okay? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If there is something working, please adopt it, okay? As long as it's open. Of course, if we are creating standards and you have to pay and there are limitations on the use, I don't think that we are going to. Of course, everybody needs some kind of customization. This has to be allowed. How is this allowed? Through licensing. And being flexible to new needs. So imagine that we create an agile standardization. Oh, we discovered that there is a new need. New need has to be implemented in the matter of days, weeks, okay? And of course, it has to be compatible with linked data. How many of you know what's linked data? Okay, not much. I'm not going to get into that. Okay, and what is the Smart Data Models Program? So, oh my God, jump. So it's a global initiative, okay? So there are 4 main organizations on the board. One, TM4 is a telco association, possibly the largest association in the world. Open and Agile Smart Cities is an association of cities across the world, mainly in Europe, but also in Asia and other continents. IUDX is the Ministry of Home Affairs of India, which is responsible for the interchange of data between cities. So it's fun to talk with them and to say, oh, we have a pilot program for 30 cities of more than 1 million people. We say, oh, it's a pilot program. Okay, nice. And the FIWARE Foundation. So what we do is to do agile standardization multi-sector. So logistics is there, but few times logistics is purely logistic. When I mean purely logistic, possibly you have to measure the environmental impact. Possibly when you are delivering the goods, you need the weather forecast. Possibly you need also the traffic. So it's no longer capable of doing things just isolated. What we provide is free and open licensed data models. What is that? You can use it for free. You can modify it to your needs, and you can share the modifications. Okay? These are the licensing terms. And possibly the most remarkable is that it's based on actual use cases. If you don't have an actual use case, you are not here. Why is that? Because I've explained the usual classical standardization defines something and tries that the world match this. This is the opposite, the other way around. So we have a use case. This use case is working, and once it's working, we try to make a data model out of it. Okay? Some cases we generalize, but tiny bit, because it's working. So there is no more demonstration that this is good, because it's working in an actual use case. Or could be the migration of an open standard which is already adopted. So this is the point. This is the differential factor. And of course, we do it at market speed. We'll explain how. And once we are not, let's say, just for the, of course, we are the FIWARE Foundation. It's compatible with everything we do. But we have also exports in JSON, JSON-LD, CSV, JSON features, DTDL, and so on. And this afternoon we'll see more things. And you can reach it at smartdatamodels.org. And the documentation that I'm going to explain is at GitHub. GitHub is a site for, let's say, storing files or programs, and it's everything available there with a free license. So what do we have here? We have the specifications. The specifications are the definition of what are the fields and the conceptual definition. So it's absolutely impossible that you read there, but you can say, oh, address, this is the postal address. Somebody's explaining to you what's there. We create this in 6 languages. The English is the, is the original one, and the other are translated automatically, okay? And we are doing this out of one single source of truth, okay? So there is only one file defining what is the data model, which is done in a technical format called JSON schema. In this JSON schema, you say, oh, this attribute is a text, and the definition is this. And this, whenever you change this file, we run a process, and these 6 languages are updated, everything is updated. Nothing is done manually. Why is that? Because we need to be very agile. If we are not doing that, we cannot meet the requirement. What other things are there? So examples. So instead of having just, let's say, just a documentation, what we have are the examples. And the examples are mandatory. So if there is no example, there is no data model, okay? And these examples are coming from actual use cases. Once we have the examples, we make some exports in some other formats, okay? And the last one is the, let's say, the schema of the data model. This schema is defining everything that is there. Used to be very flat. And of course, this schema can have, imagine, 20 properties, but you can use the ones that you need. Our only limitation is that if you are using an address and we say that the address is a string, you have to use a string. You cannot put the number. But for this, you can use it or no, up to you. And this schema is capable of validate technically. So we can say with this schema, oh, this data that you are using is compliant with the standard or no, okay? And of course, we have some additional information. If it's derived from other regulation, we included, there is a global description. We can set required attributes. We are limiting to the minimum. Why? Because we don't know what's your use case. So who are we as a program to say, you need these 3 attributes. Otherwise, sorry, I'm saying attributes, but attributes and fields of information is quite the same thing. Okay? And I'm going to tell you what's the current status. You will see here that we are dividing the information in domains. Okay? In every domain, energy now is the winner, smart cities and smart sensoring are the next. Cross-sector are those data models which are useful for most of them, like weather. Weather is relevant for smart cities, is relevant for environmental, is relevant for smart water, and so on. And there is an unfair thing because in smart sensoring, there are sensors for many things. There are many sensors for health. There are many sensors for industry, manufacturing. There are sensors for environmental things. So possibly we have to add things. So we group these data models into subjects. These subjects are similar or related data models. Imagine there is data model for transportation. There is a subject called transportation. Okay? And what you see there are the last ones that has been into the system. So autonomous mobile robot, so for giving instructions to an autonomous mobile robot. For IT management, information technology, static ITP is for managing statistical information. OCF is for Open Connectivity Foundation. This is the classic example of something already existing. The Open Connectivity Foundation is the foundation for sensor makers like Huawei, Cisco, Lenovo, Silex. There is around 55 companies, I guess, across mostly Asia and United States. Or how for the description of Digital Innovation Hub, or a manned aerial vehicle, which is a quite pedantic way of saying drones. Okay, we have quite. And what you see there, and there is one interesting, are the ones that there is in the queue. There is closely to 800 data models, and we have another close to 19 on the queue, expecting to refine some details and to get published. GS1, how many of you know what's GS1? GS1 is a very important provider of standard logistics. Initially, it's somehow proprietary, but they are going to give us permission to create a free version. Okay, we are in this process. And for vessel are for maritime transport, so there are many standards coming in. And these are the contribution. This is a collaborative effort. Remember, we are based on examples. We don't do any example. We are just receiving examples from projects, from people who are actually using. So there are 115 active contributors. There is around more than 18,000 terms that you can search for. So imagine that you need to define something. Why do you need to invent anything? You just look for it, and it's available there. It's free license, and it's recommended. So between different data models, we share many attributes. We also document the people who is adopting, those who are willing to share the information, because you don't have to. So you can be a use case, you can submit your data, your example, but if you want to appear, it's up to you. Okay? And now how to participate. There are 3 levels of participation. If you're just an user, or I want to just to look a bit here, you can find things in many different ways. You have find the data model by the name, by the subject that it belongs to, the group, or by the definition, or by the data type, whatever. Okay? Or you can imagine, oh, is this data model useful for me? You can create examples. So you can choose the data model. I want the data model for, imagine, traffic management. You click, and you start receiving examples. Random examples, it's true, in several formats, okay? Or you can subscribe to updates. So I want, whenever there is a new data model regarding smart cities, you subscribe, and then once a week, if there is any new, you receive information. Or, of course, this is quite common, you can raise an issue. Oh, you discover something. Oh, why don't you have, for parking, you don't have parking for disabled people, field for disabled people. And then we raise the issue, we share with the authors, say, how is this done? Do you have any example? Yes, please submit, and then we extend the data model. It's quite easy to extend it, okay? Or we have, this is very recent, we have a service for booking a session. Imagine that you don't know, oh, what's this about data models? You can go to the smartdatamodels.org. In the upper part, you can book a session of 30 minutes of support, and somebody will help you. Oh, what do you want? What's your interest? What do you want to do? And you can do it individually, okay? You can be a contributor. In order to be a contributor, the first question is, do you have a use case? How many of you belong to the academia, to the university? Okay, me as well, What's the point? We are receiving many submissions about, possibly you don't know what's an ontology. Oh, I've defined this ontology, which is very good. And then we go back to the question, do you have a use case? Is anybody using it? And they say, do you have a use case? Okay, come when you have a use case. Why is that? Not because we are rejecting ontologies, not at all. On the contrary, because an ontology is quite a structured definition. But what's the point? Experience. If you are not using an actual use case, you don't really know what is useful and what is not. I've seen many ontologies that define lots of terms. Then you go to the market and you discover, what are all these attributes for? Nobody's using it. And on the contrary, there are many others missing, okay? And another thing that we do before accepting anything is there an open regulation. We don't want to invent the wheel. We don't have knowledge. We don't have will to create anything brand new. If there is an open regulation, we say, oh, adopt this regulation. We are not here for creating anything or for creating your use case. And it happens from time to time that there is not exactly this data model because it is easy, but there is something related. And then we assess if we extend the existing data model or do we create a brand new one. We decide case by case. Okay? Once you have your data model, we give you permissions and there is an incubated repository when you start working. And whenever you do something, we provide you support. You do one weird thing, which is pull request, which is basically a request for a change in a directory, and you have 5 files that you have to include. Basically, the relevant one are the schema, which is defined in your data model, and the example, which is mandatory. The others are basically for customization, of if you want to be credited that you are the contributor, you can appear there, or the adopters, if you want to disseminate that you are using this data model, whatever, okay? And there are some services if you want to become a contributor. We can check that if you are documented well, telling you, oh, you have 10 attributes, but you are missing one. You are not defining what is here. Imagine that you have a data model that is defining a parameter which is X. What's X? Is a coordinate? Is something else? Okay, we force that. There are some others that instead of possibly you don't know anything about your JSON schema. Possibly is the most common situation. But if you have an example, you can put this example in a form and then the data model in JSON schema is returned. So you don't have to learn. And then you are missing only possibly the description of the data model, the definition, and this kind of thing. So you don't have to worry about that. Let's say our approach is the minimal work for contribution, the minimal. And the minimal knowledge about this technology, JSON schema, that's, I don't want to mean boring, but it's not the point. The point is that you have knowledge about what you are talking about. And you have also Slack. We have a channel for Slack if you want to support that, or you can raise an issue, or you can check the validation. Imagine that you have created the draft data model and you have your example. There is a tool in which you put your schema, you put your example, and it's telling you, oh, it's validated, it's correct. So you can submit finally. And of course, you can participate as a board member. So the 4 organizations is not a closed situation. So we are accepting new members, and we have to sign a memorandum of understanding abiding some principles, like releasing with an open license everything that we do. And what kind of contribution do you want to do? In terms of money, resources, dissemination, it depends on the use case, okay? And I guess that this is basically everything, but what I want to summarize is this. We are in a digital market. We have been talking about data spaces. Imagine that you are willing, and you will do, you are willing to share your data. If any of you are sharing the basically same data about logistics with different formats, this will be a mess. This will be a mess, and possibly you are willing to share, but nothing will work. Nothing will work. I'm exaggerating a bit. But this is your format, this is my format. I cannot match this. So what we are doing here is here to help, and help based on experience, on the experience of people who is actually doing things. Okay? And the agile standardization is not, let's say, an alternative to classical standardization. This is already working, but it's something that can meet the needs of the digital markets. Okay? And one very relevant thing, everything is free. So testing, nothing happens. Imagine that you are going to create something, you can just download all the definitions and see, oh, this matches or no. And of course, we're quite responsive. So whenever you send us a message, we tend to answer. And that's all that I wanted to talk today. And now I'm open to your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Any questions? Raise your hands. Just one is enough. Are you shy?
Sure. You have to make me a question. No. What's the most important question that you haven't? Who is paying the party? How this can be paid? So this is paid by collaborating with research projects and with other initiatives. So we as a foundation, we are non-profit, and not only non-profit. As being based in Germany, we cannot provide commercial services. So we don't sell anything, okay? But we can participate in research and development. If you are imagine in a logistics or in this kind of projects, we can be part of it. And if we are part of it, we get some funding, and some of the activities we do is maintaining this. Okay? So this is relevant. So who is paying the bill, and why are you going to last, let's say, for years? So my job is depending on that, so I'm concerned.
I have a question. Please. You can have different parties agreeing with. It's okay. I can.
For the streaming.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So you can have.
Yes.
So you can have different parties adopting different, data models and different standards, but how do you deal with the veracity of data, not just the trust of data?
Yeah. You know what's happening? I was expecting tons of problems like this. But when you have a use case, discussions are minimal. So I was expecting, I want this to be done this, I want to do the other way for the same thing. This is not happening. When you have a use case and you demonstrate that it's working, the discussion reduces to a minimum. So why is that? The discussion that we held is, why don't we extend the data model with this? But there are no discussion, in fact. So it's contribution. But this is, in fact, at the very beginning, we designed a procedure for, let's say, for reaching an agreement between we have never used. And we have the procedure, but this is, I don't want to mean ridiculous simple, but you have a use case working, sorry, this is my experience, no discussions. I don't know why. But.
Okay, thank you.
Because it seems that all your job that is super valuable, and you work for people that work with data, must be, I don't know, this is a question, how do you work so because your users, or the people that have to use data usually are politicians. I'm speaking about the top of the pyramid, and citizen itself. So I see here some enormous gap between this discussion that is the oil in the tube, so that we need this discussion, but I feel enormous gap with the final user of these systems, which are the people that will be, so they will have improved quality of life. How do you imagine to fill this enormous gap? The more I listen, I see this. What are your
Let me comment a couple of things. So, first thing, we only work with things that are actually working. And at the very beginning, when I joined, I was not expecting this to happen, but if it's working, you have to demonstrate many things. So the user is actually using it. So it's not something that somebody has defined on a desk. It's used and it's implemented and it's working, and you have examples of the payloads. It does not mean that it's not going to evolve. They evolve. But we are removing, and whenever there is a new need, so the process for the publication of an update is, imagine that we have the 6 languages, is less than 20 minutes. So we can have every 20 minutes a new version. So I would like to tell you, we have overcome some difficulties, terrible. This is not the case. Sometimes, we are in very emerging markets, like in robotics. In robotics, it's not clear what will be, let's say, the main actor. But when you go to the examples, there is a standard. Possibly you don't know what it is. It's called OpenCUA. It's been a standard for a while, and what we are doing is just, is this OpenCUA working? Yes. We do kind of a homogenization to be, let's say, in the same structure, but we are not creating brand new things. So we are taking, if these definitions are here and it's adopted, who are we to say something else? Nobody. We are no. So our goal is that we don't know anything about any of the sector, but we ask that the one who is doing needs to know and needs to have something working. And so I would like to say, when this is working, the discussions are flattened, are removed. And I was not expecting this to happen, but this is happening. And the point that we have is that not dying by success, but we have much more reach. So in fact, we go to many congresses, and they told us, I'm using the data models. Did you? I have never heard of you. In fact, we have now, Microsoft is creating a new tool for digital twins. I don't know if you know. They are taking the data models for creating their entities that they are modeling in the digital twins. Fortunately, in this case, they are mentioning us. And there are several other initiatives that are taking the data models. It's good for us, because this is the license. This is what we want to do. So,
how do you make this use case? So how, do you make some selection of best practice to explain to people how the data can improve their life? So this is my question. So because this is like a geek community, people that want their lives more simple and clear, to have more faster communication between them. How do you reach the people that give you the data? Because there are the data that... No.
We don't have the data. So we have some...
Think about smart city,
exactly.
Smart city, smart region. We need information from the people. So and imagine that I want you give me or you ask me an authorization to follow my mobile phone, right?
Yeah.
Completely anonymous. But why should I give you? Because I don't see
No. I'm going to answer. First thing, we are not into that. We only define what information should have, but not the information, what structure of the information. Imagine your name, your surname, your telephone number, your start date, or whatever. And in these general cases, we are trusting in, possibly you don't know, schema.org is just a set of identifiers created by Google. When you have a web page, if you are following the directions of schema.org, Google indexes you much better. So that's why it's not only for Google, it's Google, Bing, Yandex, and Yahoo. These 4 companies, so most of the web, are creating schema.org. Whenever it's available, we take schema.org terms. But only when there is somebody using, because schema.org is huge. Imagine, for defining a person, I guess that you have around 100 values. There are people using information, but I guess from one person we have 10, but we don't mean that we want only 10. No. Are you using? Because my impression is that people start defining things and they get hot and who is using this? Why are you working? There's no use case for that. And regarding the question, how is improving the life of others? Our goal is that whenever you go to the data space, you need to provide the information, how your information is structured. And we will provide some facilities that if you are following one of these, just put a link and you can download all the structure right away. So you don't need to read something, can be automatically done. So this is our goal. But to be honest, we need to cover more things. But I'm not seeing any competitor. I don't know why. Possibly, And the other question, somebody, maybe it was you, why you are a private entity. In fact, we have the Ministry of Home Affairs is a public entity, we are a private one, and the other two are non-profits, but private. Why are you doing this? Because we started. Should this be done by a public entity? Could it be done by the European Commission? Maybe, but we are here. And if they are willing to use it, of course, it's open license, use it. So that's our goal, that's our commitment. It will be never change the license. So you will be free to use, free to modify, and free to share the modifications. This is, let's say, this is one of the principles that when you join the initiative has to be abided. Other questions? Yes?
There was another question actually on how governments actually play in this. So maybe it's good to share the Oslo example.
Yeah.
It's just a great example.
Whenever there is an open regulation, if this is adopted, we take it. If it's adopted and there are use cases, we take it. And we, let's say, map it. And the only thing that we do is just to take the definitions and to create, let's say, the documentation in the same format. So you don't have one format for the environmental, another format for the logistics, another for energy. So everything is very, very similar. So, but we are happy. We are happy to adopt this because for us, to be honest, we are lazy people. So the less we do, the better. So if it's already done, it's adopted, put it in the same format, and go away. Yes, there is a question.
Yes, it's one last question. It's from this gentleman on green, and we'll move forward next.
Hello. How do you validate the model? If you validate the model, you have a use case and you use it. It's working, so you assume that it's a good model. How do you validate that it is a good model?
That's an interesting question. By the flavor. No. There is no... Yeah. Why is this case, let's say, valid general by experience? So there is not a single recipe. So when somebody is providing you an example and you see the values, I don't know how to define, but you realize that this is actually working or it is good. Let me give you an example. We have a contribution by farms, and it's telling us, oh, in this data model you have silo 1, silo 2, and silo 3. And we made the question, if you have 4 silos, what will happen? And then, why don't you, instead of 1, 2, 3, silo, an array of silos, and have the silos that you need. But this is the kind of thing that we made. It's very, very tiny adaptation, which is discussed with the use case. This is always discussed with the use case. Because otherwise, we are not, let's say, we are not competent to say if in a farm, maybe if they convince us, oh, in a farm can only have 3 silos for all the farms in the world. Okay. But again, I have to tell you, there is no that problems. Regarding, is it good or bad? It's working. sorry to be so, but it is working. Okay, we test that it's actually working because we contact and there are discussions and you can smell quite right away if this is actually a use case or it's just somebody who has done something. But again, people is not contacting us, I want to create a new data model because there is no payment. Maybe you get, you can get listed, but there is not much benefit. You are doing that because you really need to be here in order to share the data. So that's your, let's say, your business interest. And we haven't had, let's say, kind of imagine large companies saying, oh, why don't you adopt my data models? Because, well, remember that we ask that everything will be contributed with an open license. So there are some problems that you can imagine, but reality is we are not having it. Because there is a saying, I'm sorry, in theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not. I would summarize with this sentence. Okay. So thank you very much. I guess that we are reaching the end.